Copa America is kicking off this weekend, adding to the already packed summer football schedule. Hey there, I'm Adrian and welcome to Rabona TV's quick look at Copa America 2019 in Brazil. A quick guide, guys, well, quick-ish. I'm sure I'll end up blabbing a bit, but it's not exactly a deep dive into every single team, but enough to get you an idea of some of the storylines to watch for, the respective forms of each team coming into this, and what you can expect from them. As always, a big thank you to our sponsors for this video, OneFootball, the best app you could hope for if you want to stay up to date on everything Copa America. Just customize your newsfeed so that you're following the competition, add in the teams you want to keep tabs on them, and have access to articles, highlights, breaking news, match tickers during the matches, and so much more. Link in the description for a free download on iOS or Android. Alright, so a little background on the competition. This is the 46th edition of the Copa America and the 5th time that Brazil has hosted it. Fun fact here, every other time that Brazil has hosted the Copa America, they have won the competition. In 1919, 1922, 1949, and 1989. Speaking of Copa America titles won, Brazil does not lead the continent, as that honor goes to Uruguay. They've won it 15 times, most recently in 2011, while Argentina have won it 14 times, though their last victory came back in 1993. Brazil hasn't won it since 2007, which was their 8th title. Okay, so let's take a look at the groups now, starting with Group A, consisting of Brazil, Bolivia, Venezuela, and Peru. But before we do that, it's good to keep in mind that given the fact that there's only 3 groups, the 2 best third-place teams will also make it through to the quarterfinals. Now, of course, Brazil are the odds-on favorites to take the tournament, not only because of their great record of winning the tournament every time they have hosted it, but the personnel in their squad and their performances of late as well. Yes, they did lose Neymar during a friendly with fellow Copa America combatants Qatar. More on Qatar and why they're in the tournament later, but Brazil still boasts an extremely strong squad that will look similar to their team that made it to the quarterfinals of the 2018 World Cup, but with some notable younger additions as well. In fact, looking back to their World Cup run, had it not been for Thibaut Courtois playing one of the matches of his life, he was really playing for that Real Madrid transfer, then perhaps the Brazilians could have made it further in that competition. Now, some notable additions to Brazil's squad come in the shapes of Éder Militão, Richarlison, and David Neres, following a great season with Ajax. As per usual, they're going to have attacking options in spades, and it will be interesting to see if Tite will drop Coutinho to give a chance to some of the new boys, or if he'll keep him in the midfield alongside Casemiro and Arthur. Perhaps Fernandinho. I mean, they have a wealth of options in that position. The only area I dare to worry about would be in defense, where they are a little bit long in the tooth in some cases. I mean, Thiago Silva, João Miranda, Dani Alves, Filipe Luís. Will Cheech give the younger guys a chance? We'll see. Regardless, I reckon they'll top their group, even if 2016's failure to get out of their group could still be haunting them a little bit. Their first match will be against Bolivia, and to be honest with you, Bolivia actually has a decent record against Brazil. At least when you look at their last 6 matches where Brazil have won twice, Bolivia once, and 3 draws between them. Mind you, the last time Brazil lost to Bolivia was back in 2009, so it's a totally different footballing landscape now. Things haven't gone too great for Bolivia as they are winless in their last 4 friendlies, their best result being a 2-2 draw with Nicaragua, and 3 losses on the trot to South Korea, Japan, and France. Japan's also in this tournament, by the way. Bolivia doesn't exactly have a storied history in the Copa America, having finished runners-up on just 1 occasion, but they have actually won the tournament once before, but that was in the 60s. Now, Eduardo Villegas will have to pull off an absolute miracle to replicate that, and I can't see it happening. In fact, I can't see Bolivia finishing anywhere but bottom of Group A, as the quality of the rest of the teams will be too much for them. I can see them stealing a draw, taking a point off of someone, but nothing more. So, second place will be contested between Venezuela and Peru, the 2 teams that will actually be playing each other in their opening group stage matches. Venezuela's best ever finish in this competition came back in 2011 when they ended up in 4th, and to be honest with you, they could provide some more scares in this tournament, just as they did back in 2011. Recently, they've had draws against Japan, Iran, and Ecuador, and a couple of losses, one against Catalonia and one against Mexico. However, you can't sleep on Venezuela, as they beat the US 3-0 recently, and back in March, they defeated Argentina 3-1. I like Venezuela's options in the attack with Murillo, Rondon, and of course Joseph Martinez. Their defense typically looks good, though they did leak 3 against a good Mexican side. Their main rival in the group, Peru. Well, they of course had a great lead up to the 2018 World Cup, but once they got there, they were just a little bit impotent in front of goal, just misfiring a bit, and with some more luck and quality, maybe could have got a result against eventual champions France, whom they lost 1-0 to. But since then, the results haven't been shining too brightly. Since the World Cup, they've played 10 friendlies, won 3, lost 6, and drawn once, including a recent 3-0 loss at the hands of Colombia and a 2-0 to El Salvador. Now that being said, they did defeat Chile 3-0 back in October of 2018, so Peru is a tough team to sort of get a read on. You'll recognize many of the names in their squad, as Guerrero is still that guy up top for the most part, with Cueva and Carrillo still involved. Farfan is in the squad as well. They have decent attacking options, but their defense does worry me just a little bit. It's a toss-up between Venezuela and Peru for me, with each just as likely to slip through, but I think that Peru is going to pull it together and finish in second behind Brazil. Group B will feature Argentina, Colombia, Paraguay, and one of the special invites, Qatar. Now, Argentina hasn't won an international trophy since 1993, unless you want to count that one against Nicaragua, which was of course the Copa America title back in 93. So if they weren't itching for a title already, then the thought of grabbing one for their first in 26 years on the soil of their biggest rival, Brazil, has got to be tantalizing enough for them to come together and perform, shouldn't it? I mean, I don't know. With the talent that Argentina consistently boasts in the midfield and the attacking areas of the pitch, you'd like to believe that they could and should steamroll most teams they come up against, but their defense has caused issues in the past, and it could do so again. But in the latter stages, I think they'll be okay in the group. Lionel Scaloni has played with both a 4-4-2, although that was during a friendly where he was seemingly experimenting a ton, as well as a 3-4-3, so it'll be interesting to see what route they take. Otamendi, Juan Foyth, and Saravia as a back three maybe, or do you go with a back four to include Tagliafico after his great season with Ajax? There's options. In the attack, there's tons of quality, as I said, with Messi, of course, Dybala, Lautaro Martinez, Sergio Aguero, and their midfield isn't bad either, with the standout there being Gio Lo Celso following his great year at Real Betis. Could be on the move this summer also. Argentina should be good value to make it out of their group, despite their defense causing me to worry a bit, but it doesn't make me worry enough that they will be outside of the top two. They should be fine. But this group isn't easy. They don't have to worry about just their opening day opponents, Colombia, but Qatar could pose a problem as well. Before we get to those two teams though, let's quickly look at Paraguay, a team that has fallen off the boil a bit since their strong team from the 2010 World Cup. That same team then finished in second at the 2011 Copa America, but since then, well, they failed to qualify for both the 2014 and 2018 World Cups. They did make it to the semifinals of the 2015 Copa America, but at the 2016 Centenario, they were dreadful. Bottom of the group. I think they just got 1 point. Paraguay is in a bit of a transitional period with their team as they are an extremely young team, but unfortunately, the quality isn't there, so they still have to call upon veterans such as Oscar Cardozo in the attack. Their attack hasn't managed to score more than 2 goals in one game since August of 2017. Couple that with a defense that has definitely had some stronger years, and you have a recipe for another tough campaign for the Albiroja, as coming into this, their form isn't great. Sure, they won their last match against Guatemala 2-0, but they have lost 5 of their last 8 matches as well. One of those draws was a 1-1 result against Honduras, a team that conceded 7 goals against Brazil. I think that illustrates well the sort of gap in quality between Paraguay and the top teams in South America, and I can't see them causing many upsets in this tournament. Perhaps they would have a chance against our next team, Qatar, but even so, even before Qatar was really taken seriously after their AFC Asian Cup victory, they managed to beat Paraguay 2-0 back in 2009. And I know, it's a completely different landscape now at the international level, but it's just some fun trivia. So yeah, at this year's edition of the Copa America, the 2 guest spots are occupied by Japan and Qatar, the 2 finalists from the Asian Cup earlier this year. Qatar were the surprise winners, well, surprise to everyone except for Xavi, apparently, as their striker Almoez Ali and his 9 goals led them to a near-perfect run to the final, which they defeated Japan 3-1 in. By the way, Qatar wasn't all offense either, as Japan's goal in the final was the only goal they conceded all tournament. 19 goals for, 1 against. In fact, it was a perfect run to the final. All wins, no goals against. So while they don't have any problem scoring, their defense isn't too bad either, and in the only match since their AFC victory, a friendly with Brazil, they showed that they aren't to be taken lightly. They lost 2-0 thanks to a terrible first half from themselves, and while they had a hard time breaking through the Brazilian defense, they played much better in the second half and could have had a goal in the 90th had Kuki converted his penalty. Qatar's Spanish coach, Felix Sanchez, is known to mix it up as far as formations go, as he employed a 3-5-2 recently against Brazil, but during the Asian Cup would sometimes line up with 5 defenders, sometimes 4, but no matter the shape, the team seems to perform well under him, proving they can adapt to their opponents. I think Qatar is odds on to finish above Paraguay at least, but will they finish above the next team? Being Colombia, who I think will be a little disappointed in their 2018 World Cup performance after they lost in a shootout against England in the round of 16. Wasn't a great performance from them. In fact, they'll probably feel that they should have done better in most of their matches at the World Cup, bar the easy 3-0 win over Poland. But since then, they have lost just once and won 6 from their last 8 friendlies, as the team is playing quite well, including their 3-0 win over Peru, as mentioned earlier. While James isn't coming into the tournament in the best form after a middling season with Bayern Munich, Duvan Zapata could have a breakout performance at the international level after he stole the headlines throughout the season in Italy for his goal-scoring exploits with Atalanta, helping them to secure Champions League football for the first time in their history. So I'm interested to see whether Falcao will start ahead of Zapata or not. My gut says yes, at least initially, with Zapata perhaps taking over in the second or third match, depending on Falcao's performance against Argentina. Colombia have a lot of attacking options, as I haven't even mentioned Luis Muriel or Juan Cuadrado yet. And I do like their defense, despite Mina having a forgettable season with Everton where he made just 13 appearances. He tends to show up for his national team, as he did at the World Cup, and I expect good things from himself. Sanchez next to him, likely Arias on the right and Tassio on the left. For Colombia, their fate will likely be decided via how well they do against both Paraguay and Qatar, and not so much in their grudge match against Argentina. And given their form lately and the quality they boast, despite Qatar pushing them all the way, I think Colombia will make it out of this group. But I wouldn't be surprised if Qatar makes it out of the group as well, as one of the 2 best third-place teams. And finally, let's look at Group C, which boasts Uruguay, Ecuador, Japan, and Chile. Uruguay, the country that has the most Copa America titles to its name, will look to build upon what was a pretty decent World Cup where they went out in the quarterfinals against the champions France. Following the tournament, however, their friendlies haven't been a massive success. They are just friendlies, we gotta remember, for all these teams, really. At least when they played against the top teams. While they managed to win 4 matches against Uzbekistan, Thailand, Panama, and Mexico, they did end up losing against Brazil, France, Japan, and South Korea, but each loss was only by a single goal. But Japan will play with confidence next time they meet in this Copa America group stage. But I mean, that said, Uruguay boasts perhaps the 3rd or 4th strongest squad at this tournament on paper, at least in my opinion. Suarez and Cavani in the attack, both of which tend to put in strong performances for their country. A midfield that can count on the likes of Bentancur, Lucas Torreira, Matias Vecino, and Nandez. And of course, everyone knows how well Uruguay defends thanks to the duo of Godin and Jimenez at center back, though Coates is an option as well. He had a good season with Sporting. For me, Uruguay are nailed on to go through in one of the top 2 spots. But a team like defending champions Chile could cause them some problems, despite not being in the greatest of form in recent years, you could say. They failed to qualify for the 2018 World Cup thanks to 3 losses from their last 4 qualifiers, and since then, despite changing their coach to Reinaldo Rueda, their record in friendlies hasn't been anything to call home about. 13 matches, 5 wins, 4 losses, 4 draws. Not exactly rare form following a massive failure from the 2-time defending Copa America champions. And speaking of not exactly rare form, Alexis Sanchez of course made the squad for Chile. Hard to keep him out of it, I don't argue with that, but he's barely played for United this past season, and when he has, he's looked terrible and a shadow of himself. But Castillo has been scoring for Copa America, and Vargas has been alright for Tigres as well. Arturo Vidal will likely yet again be the main guy in the midfield, as some of the usual suspects got the call, such as Aranguiz, Gary Medel, and for me, Chile's defense could be their weak point. I think Chile will have a tough time, but they should get past Ecuador, who have had some uninspired results amidst their 2 victories over Peru and Panama last November. Ecuador lost to Mexico 3-2 on the 9th of this month and have actually previously played fellow combatant Qatar back in October, which they lost 4-3 in a wild match that saw Ecuador lose both Frixen Arazzo and Ener Valencia to red cards. But Valencia's was in second half stoppage time, so it made no difference. But anyway, Ecuador's squad squad doesn't inspire much confidence in my opinion, and I can't see anything other than a 4th place finish for them, all things considered. They do have Hernan Dario Gomez back as their coach, the guy who led them to their first ever World Cup appearance back in 2002, but I can't see him enjoying this tournament. I don't think it's going to be very fun for him. Partially because the final team in their group, Japan, will be stronger than them as well, I think. Japan are obviously the second special invite to this tournament, and they had a pretty strong World Cup a year ago, pushing Belgium all the way to the bitter end in a 3-2 loss. They followed that up with their Asian Cup run in January of 2019, in which they made it all the way to the finals before their 3-1 loss to Qatar. They haven't played much since that tournament, just 4 friendlies, losing 1-0 to Colombia, payback for their defeat of Colombia in the World Cup, drawing with Trinidad and Tobago, and defeating both Bolivia and El Salvador. Their squad should look pretty similar to the one from the World Cup, with one of the emerging talents perhaps being Shoya Nakajima. Yuya Osako, who had such a solid performance at the World Cup, isn't coming off the greatest season for Werder Bremen, although he did play well in the AFC Asian Cup. So I think Keisuke Nagai and Minamino will start up top, and with the absence of Shinji Kagawa, Ritsu Don will likely take the central attacking midfielder position, and he had a solid season with Groningen. I think that Japan has enough to beat both Ecuador and Chile. They've shown that they can compete with South American opposition, and I really like what coach Hajime Moriyasu has done with the team since taking over for Akira Nishino. Making the finals in your first tournament isn't so bad. Definitely something to build upon. So I personally see Japan and Uruguay making it out of this group in the top 2 positions, Chile with a chance via the 3rd place position. So yeah, that should give you an okay idea as to the form of the respective teams coming into it. Let me know your picks for the favorites of the tournament. For me, it's hard to look past Brazil as the favorites, especially on home soil, but I mean, hey, anything could happen. If you enjoyed this video, then be sure to drop a like. Otherwise, I'll see ya in the next one. Peace.